I grew up in a house where the word doctor was spoken the way other families say God. It wasn't a suggestion, it was gravity. My father, Dr. Rajesh Patel, cardiologist, had come to New Jersey from Ahmedabad in 1987 with two suitcases and one dream: that his children would wear white coats and never know the humiliation of being told, "Go back to your country." My mother, who still introduced herself as Mrs. Dr. Patel, kept a framed photo of my older sister, Priya, and her Johns Hopkins acceptance letter on the mantle like it was the Virgin Mary. I was the second daughter, the spare. My name is Anjali, but at home they called me Dr. Sahib from the time I could spell my own name. When I was 8, I came home with a drawing of a girl on a stage wearing a red cape. My father turned the paper over, wrote mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, on the back, and told me to memorize it for the spelling bee. That was the day I learned that art was a hobby you outgrew, like light-up sneakers. By high school, I was a machine. 4.7 GPA, 1590 SAT, president of Science Olympiad, volunteer at Robert Wood Johnson, first author on a case report about pediatric myocarditis that my father helped me write. Everyone said I was a shoo-in for Penn or Columbia. I smiled in the photos, the dutiful Indian daughter with the tight braid and the heavier heart. The lies started junior year when I signed up for Introduction to Theater for fun. The teacher, Miss Delgado, let me read for Juliet. When I finished the balcony scene, the room was quiet for 3 full seconds, an eternity in audition world, and then everyone clapped like I'd done something impossible. For the first time in my life, someone looked at me and didn't see a future physician. They saw Anjali. I got the part. I told my parents it was an extracurricular for college apps. My mother nodded approvingly. Drama looked good next to the piano recitals and the Bharatanatyam Arangatram. They came to the closing performance because the dean of Rutgers Medical was supposedly in the audience. I played Juliet, dying in a white nightgown, arms flung out, blood, corn syrup, and food coloring on my lips. When the curtain fell, the applause felt like oxygen. I looked into the third row and saw my father's face, tight, polite, already calculating how many residency directors he could corner at the reception. That summer, I got into the pre-med program at NYU with a full ride. My parents threw a party with 200 people I barely knew. Aunties pinched my cheeks and said, "Beta, you're set for life." I smiled until my face hurt. 2 weeks later, I got the letter from Tisch School of Arts, also a full ride, merit scholarship for acting. I hid it in my underwear drawer, under the sanitary pads, because no one in my family would ever look there. Senior year, I lived 2 lives. By day, I wore the stethoscope my father bought me and shadowed him in the cath lab. By night, I took the train into the city for acting classes I paid for with babysitting money. I learned how to cry on cue, how to fall in love with a stranger for 3 minutes on stage, how to still be me when the lights came up. I started to dream in monologues instead of biochemistry pathways. The explosion came in March, 2 weeks before the deposit deadline. I was in the kitchen practicing a monologue from Four Colored Girls when my mother walked in. She stood frozen in her silk sari, hearing me say, "Somebody almost walked off with all of my stuff." The word stuff hung in the air like smoke. "What is this nonsense?" she asked in Gujarati. I told her everything. The classes, the acceptance, the scholarship, the fact that I hadn't slept properly in 2 years because every time I closed my eyes, I saw myself at 35, married to another doctor, living in a house with marble countertops and a hollow chest. My father came home early that day. I still remember the sound of his keys hitting the granite. Sharp. Final. They sat me down in the living room under the crystal chandelier my mother had shipped from Surat. "You want to throw away your life for drama?" my father said. His voice was quiet, which was worse than yelling. "You want to be a waitress who does plays sometimes. You want people to ask, 'What does Anjali's husband do?' and have no answer." My mother cried the way only Indian mothers can. Silent tears that make you feel like the worst person ever born. "We left everything for you girls. Everything." Priya, home from her residency interview trail, looked at me like I'd murdered someone. Do you know how many people would kill for your brain? You're being selfish. That word, selfish, landed like a slap. In our culture, family is the only unit that matters. The self is a myth, a luxury, an American disease. I went to my room and sat on the floor and stared at the two acceptance packets side by side. NYU School of Medicine and Tisch School of Arts. One was thick with prestige and loan forgiveness programs. The other was thin, almost weightless, like a playbow. I didn't sleep. At 4 a.m., I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and heard my father on the phone in his study. He was speaking to his friend, Dr. Shaw. She's confused. Too much freedom here. These American kids, they think life is about passion. Passion doesn't pay for nursing homes. I stood there listening to my future being negotiated in another language, and something inside me snapped. Not with anger, but with clarity. The kind that comes after a fever breaks. The next morning, I told them I wasn't going to medical school. I expected screaming. Instead, there was silence. Thick and suffocating. My father stood up slowly, like an old man, and said, "Then, you are no longer my daughter." My mother wailed and threw her Mangalsutra on the floor. Priya called me ungrateful. I packed one suitcase and left before lunch. I slept on the floor of my theater friend Maya's dorm that night. The next week, I moved into a 6th-floor walk-up in Alphabet City with 3 other artists who paid rent by bartending and doing background work on Law & Order. My parents changed the locks on the house in West Windsor. My mother left 17 voicemails that first month, alternating between pleading and cursing. My father sent one text: "When you fail, do not come crawling back." I didn't fail. I threw myself into Tisch like a drowning person grabs a rope. I understudied off-Broadway. I did Shakespeare in the Park as a spear carrier. I booked a recurring role on a Netflix show about first-gen college kids. The first time I saw my name in the opening credits, Anjali Patel, I sat on my fire escape and cried so hard the neighbor thought someone died. My parents didn't speak to me for 2 years. The reconciliation, when it came, was accidental. My mother saw me on TV. Some Diwali special where I played a daughter fighting with her traditional parents. The irony wasn't lost on her. She called the next day, voice small. "You looked thin." That was her version of "I miss you." We met at a South Indian restaurant in Iselin. My father came too, wearing the same sweater he'd had since 2003. Nobody apologized. We talked about the weather and Priya's wedding plans. Then, over masala dosa, my father said, "Your mother says you're doing well." It wasn't praise, but it wasn't disownment either. I smiled. "I'm happy, Papa." He looked at me for a long time. Happy is good. Healthy is better. But happy. Okay. It's been 7 years now. I'm not famous. Yet. But I pay my bills with acting. I teach theater to kids in the public schools on weekends. Last year, I was in a play that transferred to Broadway. My parents came to opening night. My mother wore a sari the color of marigolds. My father clapped so hard, I thought he'd hurt his hands. Afterward, in the lobby, he hugged me. Awkward. Brief. Smelling of the same old spice he's worn since the 90s. "I was wrong," he whispered into my hair. "You didn't choose yourself over family. You chose yourself as family." I cried into his shoulder, ruining both our outfits. Some nights, I still wake up at 3 a.m. terrified that I made a terrible mistake, that I'll end up broke and alone. Then I remember the alternative. A life where I was brilliant and miserable, saving strangers' hearts while my own slowly stopped beating. I chose myself. And somehow, against every expectation my family ever had, that choice brought us back to them. Different, yes, but whole. The moment I walked out that door in West Windsor with one suitcase and a broken heart, I thought I was leaving my family behind. Turns out, I was finally walking towards them. The real them.
the ones who could bend just enough to let me breathe.